All right, guys, welcome to Flob Oriana's MMA show. I'm your host, Flob Oriana, brought to you by Four Corner Sports. All right, guys, so this is the UFC 264 post fight reaction. Okay, it is Sunday evening, and I had a little bit of time to think about what I wanted to talk about. It was one of those things where it's like, a lot went down on Saturday night, for UFC 264, headlined by Conor McGregor versus Dustin Poirier. I honestly felt like I needed a day to digress. I needed to think about what I wanted to say because the main event obviously took the spotlight, everything from how it ended to the post fight interviews and stuff like that. I would say things went very sour very quickly, and we'll see if we get a fourth fight in this series between Conor McGregor versus Dustin Poirier. But without further ado, we'll go straight into the main event. Dustin Poirier, versus Conor McGregor, the trilogy, the fight that a lot of people were expecting, a lot of people wanted to see. Only lasted a round. No, it didn't end by knockout or anything like that. It didn't end by submission. Fortunately, ended up by a doctor stoppage. Reason why? Conor McGregor ended up breaking the lower part of his leg. He had a fracture in his tibia, and the fight stopped after the first round. It was one of those things where it's like, as a fight fan, that's the last thing you want to see as a fighter get hurt, whether you're rooting for the individual or not. And it just became one of those things where it's like, damn, like, did we have to see another leg injury? We saw that a couple of times at UFC 261 with Jimmy Crute, what's it called, his leg injury. And then you also had Chris Weidman breaking his leg after he did a leg kick towards Uriah Hall. So it's one of those things that's like, man, we just can't, we just don't want to see any more leg injuries, but it's a part of the sport, The way that the first round started, Conor aggressively, it's the first round is notoriously, no pun intended, his round. He starts off aggressive, he goes all out. He has that mindset. It's like, hey, I'm not somebody that gets paid by the hour. I'm gonna just go in, knock you out, get the job done, and collect my paycheck. Right? Respect that a lot. Came in very aggressive against Dustin Poirier. Dustin Poirier didn't seem to get phased whatsoever. Started off with a spin kick, kicked him right into the abdomen area. Started doing these leg kicks, making sure he was very active with his legs, making sure that he wasn't gonna get kicked in the legs, doing front kicks. Was taking a very strong mixed martial art approach as opposed to the second fight where it was more boxing oriented, more of his his front leg being heavy and being more in a boxing oriented pose. I felt like Dustin, after that first 45 seconds of Conor being explosive, he made great transitions and adjustments as for how he wants to take this fight. Was able to take the fight to the floor, dominated him. I mean, the way that he dominated Conor was the same way that Khabib ended up dominating Conor in their fight back in 2018. So it was one of those fights where I'm like, oh wow, like Conor really needs to make adjustments on the ground because this guy's getting mauled. He is getting mauled by Dustin Poirier. All right, Conor ended up shooting for a guillotine choke, and Dustin Poirier, as a black belt jiu-jitsu artist that he is, was able to shift more towards the right and allow himself not to try to get choked out. And he was comfortable. He knew exactly what he was doing and stuff like that. So Conor, looked like he didn't know what to do on the floor, getting mauled, getting elbowed, getting punched, this, that, and the third. And I'm thinking to myself, wow, for the money that Conor McGregor has, I think he needs to fire whoever his jiu-jitsu coach is because his ground game looks terrible. All right. And Dustin allowed Conor to get back up. Conor ended up going for more leg kicks. Dustin ended up checking one of his leg kicks, pointed at him, and was like, I got you, And we really didn't think much of it, but it came down to one of those things. As the round was weighing in, both fighters, try to go for a right hand. They miss. Conor steps back, and his his right ankle twist falls. He falls down to the floor, and with like 5 seconds left, Dustin was trying to go for the finish, and the horn sounds on going into the second round, but Conor's pointing to his ankle. It's fractured. It's fractured right above the ankle, more towards the tibia area, and yeah, fight's over. Doctor stoppage. Conor's upset. Dustin, takes the victory. Like whatever, I got the victory. Job well done. And for McGregor fans, this is a built-in excuse. Conor got hurt. You guys don't know what would have happened in rounds 2, 3, 4, and 5. For fans of Dustin Poirier, look, we ended up beating you twice in a row. There's no reason for a fourth fight. So, Dustin, after they announced that he ended up getting the victory, he does the Conor walk. He was like, I thought it was kind of funny. Honestly, me personally, I thought Conor was gonna win going into the fight, but nobody expects injuries to end up happening. So, Dustin does the mock, and Conor's all pissed off, yelling, "It's a doctor stoppage! It's a doctor stoppage! It's a doctor stoppage!" The guy doesn't want the fight to be called a TKO, wants it to be called a doctor stoppage because of an injury. Conor's still mouthing off to Dustin, saying that he's gonna murder him. Dustin was already pissed off about that type of stuff. He didn't really care about the antics about, Conor trying to like stir the pot, saying that Dustin's wife ended up DMing him and stuff like that. But, Dustin handled everything like a gentleman that he is, class act and professional. Conor, on the other hand, when Rogan was interviewing him, I didn't think it was necessary for Rogan to interview him. I thought the medical staff should have just got him, put him on a stretcher, and rolled him out. All right, but Rogan interviewed him, and the antics continue, saying that this is not over. That we will fight again, whether it's in the octagon or in the streets. I will get my revenge on you. And then he starts going after Dustin's wife, saying that stuff that I can't even repeat. You guys can watch the interview, that Rogan gave him after the fight was over. So totally unnecessary, and Dustin wanted to go after him, in which he had every right to, but obviously UFC security was getting in the way, making sure that wasn't going to happen. Anyways, so that's that. Now Conor fans have that built-in excuse. Look, we deserve a fourth fight. Dana White has even said it in the post-fight presser. The fight to make, when Conor is healthy is, Dustin versus Conor part 4. Do I personally want to see that? I really don't have much interest. I think, me personally, as a Conor fan, right, and I'm a big Dustin fan as well too. Me personally, I do feel like the best days of Conor are over. Reason why I say that is only because of the fact that I just feel like Conor McGregor has only gotten one win ever since he came back from having a fight with Floyd Money Mayweather, right? And that one fight that he ended up getting a victory off of was Donald Cowboy Cerrone, which, you know what? Donald Cowboy Cerrone is a shell of himself. He is not the fighter that many people thought of him back in the day. This guy's punch drunk, and this guy is on, I believe, on what, a 6-fight losing streak, 7-fight losing streak. There's no real aspirations, like I want to see Cowboy fight, and Conor got a victory off of him, who is not somebody that should be like, hey, I got a big victory off of him. As for Conor McGregor, what's next for him? Obviously surgery. Her surgery was successful, but people are gonna say the Nate Diaz fight and stuff like that. Honestly, I would love to see him fight Rafael Dos Anjos. I know they were supposed to fight at one point. That fight didn't happen. Dos Anjos had to pull out, and then obviously we were able to get the luxury of seeing him fighting Nate Diaz. I want to see him fight Nate Diaz, maybe even Jorge Masvidal. That's a fight that I wouldn't mind seeing. But yeah, guys, that's something that they could play with. I don't really care to see him fight Dustin anymore. I'm sorry, guys, my mouth is dry. I don't really care to see him fight Dustin at this point. Only fights I want to see is him fight Nate Diaz, maybe Jorge Masvidal, definitely, and Rafael Dos Anjos in RDA. Those are the only fights I want to see him fight, or maybe even Tony Ferguson. I mean, Tony Ferguson is on a on a 2-3 fight losing streak. Would love to see him fight him. At 155 pounds. I know they had beef with one another. I mean, that's the whole reason why some people call him McNuggets, because of the fact that Tony was the one that called him McNuggets after Tony ended up fighting Anthony Pettis on the same card that Conor fought Khabib Nurmagomedov. So yeah, guys. So those are the only 4 fights I want to see: Nate Diaz, Jorge Masvidal, Rafael Dos Anjos, or Tony Ferguson. You guys let me know on what you think, whether I'm accurate, those are the 4 fights to make for Conor, or not. But moving on to the co-main event, we had Gilbert Burns versus Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, this is the end of the road for him. He needs to get a victory over Gilbert Burns. Doesn't get a victory, probably won't see him fight for a title ever again. He had two chances for the belt for Tyron Woodley many years ago. If he didn't get it done against Gilbert Burns, he probably wasn't going to get another title shot. Gilbert Burns took the right approach, ended up winning 2 rounds to 1, gets the victory over Steve Wonderboy Thompson. Did not exchange and banged with him as many people would have thought. Used his jiu-jitsu, took him down 3 times as a personal best record, was able to hold down Wonderboy Thompson, which is pretty rare, all right, and nonetheless take him down. And Gilbert Burns, was able to get it done. Was it the most exciting fight? No, it wasn't. Was it the most prettiest fight? It was not. It was very dull, vanilla, boring, but Gilbert Burns got it done. What's next for Gilbert Burns? He called out Nate Diaz, Leon Edwards, Jorge Masvidal. The only fight that I think I see happening is him versus Leon. I don't see him fighting Jorge Masvidal, which I would love to see that fight, but I don't think that we see that because of the fact that we are most likely going to end up seeing Nate Diaz versus Jorge Masvidal next. Only because both guys have a history with one another. Masvidal ended up fighting Nate Diaz in the Madison Square Garden card. It was a doctor stoppage that ended up having the fight being called off because Nate was bleeding profusely out of his underneath. I think it was his right eye, if I'm not mistaken, and the cut was in the closing up. But Gilbert Burns versus Leon Edwards, that's the fight to make. Leon Edwards is maybe a 2 or maybe third best third best welterweight in the world. Again, now you're putting him against Gilbert Burns, who is a great grappler. If he holds these onto the floor, it's game over. But he can fall in love with that striking too. I would love to see that matchup. Do I think that's going to be a matchup to make? Possibly, only because of the fact if they keep on stalling with Usman and Colby Covington, I can see Leon Edwards being like, you know what, at this point, I got to take a fight. There's no way that I can hold off on not having a fight. And Gilbert Burns, this guy wants to fight like almost every other weekend if he's able to. So yeah, I think that's a fight that's most likely going to end up happening. For Wonderboy Thompson, my opinion is I would love to see him fight the winner of, Lian G. Lang, the Leech, versus Hamza Shemaya. That's an excellent fight. If Wonderboy Thompson can get a victory over somebody like Hamza Shemaya, then he is right back in title contention. Or maybe him fight somebody like a Jorge Masvidal. I mean, Wonderboy ended up beating up on Jeff Neal. He ended up beating up on Vicente Luque. I want to see Wonderboy possibly get one more crack at it. I believe it's over for him, but you know what? He's still in the UFC. Why not give it another try? Try to build yourself back up. Try to fight somebody of a big of a name like Masvidal. Maybe fight Michael Chiesa if he's able to defeat Vicente Luque in their bout. So yeah, I mean, I believe the route to a title shot is over, but Wonderboy could be, the Caitlin Chukagians of the welterweight division. Just knock everybody out of a possibility of a title shot, and just be that that top five gatekeeper. That he doesn't like that title, but he's most likely gonna end up owning that title since he's 38 years old, and I don't think that the UFC is gonna give him a title shot. So yeah, third fight on the main card was Tai Tuivasa versus Greg Hardy. This fight, obviously, I predicted it to go just about a minute. Went a little bit over a minute, by like a minute and 5 seconds, but it was a stand and bang fight. It was one of those fights where Greg Hardy was like, all right, right here, we're gonna stand and bang over here. Something similar to Max Holloway ended up doing to Ricardo Lamas in the final 10 seconds of their fight, and Greg Hardy ends up landing a punch to Tai Tuivasa. Tuivasi's hurt, and Tuivasa lands a left hook right to Greg Hardy, putting his lights out. Just a little over a minute into the fight, and Tai Tuivasa gets the victory as he normally does. As for how he celebrates, he does the shoey, not once, not twice, but about 4 times he did a shoey, and then some fan in the stands, as he was drinking out of a boot, some fan ended up pouring some of Dustin Poirier's hot sauce. That was hilarious. I mean, I would never do a shoey with hot sauce. All right, maybe I'm crazy enough maybe to do a shoey in general. I wouldn't mind probably doing a shoey with Tai Tuivasa, but it has to be my shoe. I'm not doing somebody else's shoe. You crazy? But yeah, Tai Tuivasa says he wanted a top 15, top 10 opponent. I certainly do feel like he needs to get somebody in that range. I wouldn't mind him getting an Alexei Oleinik, a Tom Aspinall, something of that nature. And I do believe that, the time it is to come for Tai Tuivasa to get an opponent within that range. For Greg Hardy, I mean, I feel like, it's only a matter of time before he gets cut. One more loss, and that's it. I think the UFC experiment with Greg Hardy is going to be over. I say they should just make him fight Parker Porter. Parker Porter, only has about 2 or 3 fights into his UFC career. Having, against him, if you look at Greg Hardy's career, for Jorgen De Castro, he's no longer a part of the UFC. What's it called? Alan Crowder, he's not in the UFC right now. So I think a lot of the fighters that Greg Hardy ended up fighting, the majority of them are not in the UFC outside of Alexander Volkov, and people like that, and like more what's it called? Marcin Tybura. Moving on, we had a women's bantamweight fight with Yana Kunitskaya versus Irene Aldana. Irene Aldana missed weight by 3.5 pounds. She had to surrender 30% of her purse, but me oh my, Irene Aldana is a savage. Ends up getting the TKO victory over Yana Kunitskaya. Irene Aldana is a easy title contender, but I don't think the UFC would give her a title shot, because of the fact that she missed weight. I certainly want to see her fight somebody inside of the top 3. Do I think that she should get a rematch against Holly Holm? Possibly. I would like to see what adjustments she's going to be able to do. She looked like she made mass improvements since that Holly Holm fight. She said she had a broken foot, and that's one of the reasons why she was very limited in her mobility against Holly Holm. Whether or not I buy that or not, that's one of those things I'm like, all right, whatever, you can say that, and you can say make yourself feel better. Me personally, I don't buy it. I think fighters who lose just need to own it. But whatever. I mean, if you had a broken foot, you had a broken foot. Who am I to say that you didn't have that broken foot? But I think for Irene Aldana, right, she needs one more fight, and especially if Amanda Nunes gets the victory over Juliana Pena, I certainly do believe that she's in, what's it called? Irene Aldana definitely needs just that one more victory. I think her fighting Aspen Ladd or GDR is the fight to make. Aspen Ladd and GDR are inside of the top 3. GDR number 1, Ladd number 3, Holly Holm number 2. She already lost to Holly. I wouldn't mind seeing her fight GDR or Aspen Ladd, and to see where she goes. I mean, if she goes with GDR, it's going to be more of a stand-up game. If she goes with Aspen Ladd, it's going to be more of a ground game. Me personally want to see her fight GDR because stylistically, that would be a funner fight as opposed to Aspen Ladd. As for Yana Kunitskaya, well, I just think that, she just lost to a more superior opponent. But the weight, she could easily say, hey, I lost to somebody that was heavier, that didn't make weight. And that's one of the reasons why I ended up getting, struck. Fine. No problem. who I think that she should end up fighting is somebody like Sarah McCann. Sarah McCann is a great wrestler, one of the best wrestlers in the bantamweight division. If she's able to get past Sarah McCann, I would think that maybe you should probably, get her back into somebody fighting somebody inside of the top 5, top 3 of anything. And then after that, we had on the first fight of the card, the fight that I was looking forward to, Sean O'Malley versus Chris Moutinho. I messaged Mike Heck from MMAfighting.com. He does What the Heck and all these other shows. And I asked him, hey, you know about the New England Cartel. I asked him, what should we expect of Chris Moutinho leading into UFC 264? He messaged me back saying, hey, Chris is one of those fighters that is not scared at the moment. He's going to come at you, and it's going to be a war for as long as, O'Malley is able to, as long as Chris is able to, compete with O'Malley. And Chris Moutinho definitely earned a lot of fans inside of the UFC, and he definitely has a lot more eyeballs in the world of MMA, because from fighting from the regional scene, now going to the big boys league in the UFC, he's fighting the Hype Train and Sean O'Malley, and Sean O'Malley definitely hit him with so many punches, and Chris Moutinho ate all of them. And he was still walking forward, and he was walking him down, tiring him out, because obviously going backwards is more energy than walking forwards. And I felt like at some point Sean O'Malley felt a little bit discouraged, knowing that, hey, how come I can't knock this dude out? I'm showboating. I'm hitting you with spinning roundhouse kicks. I'm hitting you with combinations. I'm hitting you with jabs, and you eating all that, and you still walking me down. That is some crazy MFer, all right? And Chris Moutinho is one of those guys where next time I see that he's on a card, I'm definitely going to be watching. He's having some of that effect of like a Joaquin Buckley. Remember when Joaquin Buckley ended up doing that crazy, spinning back kick on Impa Kasaga knife, and then everybody was tuning into his fights? Well, Chris Moutinho definitely earned it, a lot. He definitely earned a lot of MMA fans, to see him in his next fight. I think personally, if Miles Johns gets the victory over his opponent this Saturday, in the Islam Makhachev card, then I think he should fight somebody like a Miles Johns, or him fight Davey Grant, since Davey Grant ended up fighting a couple weeks ago against Marlon Chito Vera. But man, Chris Moutinho ate everything, and still couldn't put him out. It took Herb Dean to call the fight off. Many people like myself were complaining about the stoppage. There were some people that was like, it was a good stoppage. He was eating way too many punches. Whatever side you were on, at this point, whatever. Herb stopped the fight. Maybe he saved Chris Moutinho from like possibly brain damage, or just a beating where he wasn't going to be able to recover permanently. Overall, Sean O'Malley, put on a show. Chris Moutinho, was fighting back. But I gotta say, Moutinho needs to learn how to move his head. If he would have moved his head a little bit, he definitely would have been able to evade at least a good 50 to 75 punches. O'Malley was saying it in the post-fight, interview, that his hands were hurting, that this guy's tough, and he never fought somebody like this before. But yeah, very exciting fight. I think for Sean O'Malley, for him calling out Rob Font, Peter Yan, Dominic Cruz, and Cody Garbrandt. The fight to make, for me personally, is Cody Garbrandt, but he ended up calling Rob Font out too, so I would love to see that. Maybe Rob Font can, get revenge for his battle that he ended up having with, that Sean ended up having with Chris Moutinho. Moutinho and Rob Font are in the same camp, so yeah, that's a good fight to make. But yeah, guys, so that's what happened. Overall, my reaction to the whole card, I gotta give this card an easy B+. B+ because of the fact that the co-main event really, ended up affecting on how I viewed the card. I would have given it an A if Gilbert Burns and Stephen Wonderboy Thompson would have been able to, lived up to expectations, but they didn't live up to expectations. Everything else on the card was phenomenal. The O'Malley fight, the Yana Kunsakai versus Irene Aldana fight, the Tai Tuivasa Greg Hardy fight. Who doesn't love it when heavyweights stand and bang? And then obviously, the Conor McGregor versus Dustin Poirier fight, even though, the fight was on the floor for about 3 minutes, it was still a brawl. It was still a barn burner. And it was one of those fights where it's like you could not keep your eyes off that screen. You didn't even want to look at your phone because you didn't want to miss out on anything special. But yeah, so that's my take on UFC 264. It's definitely a B+. Friday Night was definitely O'Malley versus Moutinho. I think that Dustin Poirier deserves the title shot next. Think that he should be fighting at the end of the year. Put him on that December card or that November card. I think McGregor needs to heal up, stop making things personal, and then, him fight Nate Diaz or RDA. Tai Tuivasa, give him Alexi Oleinik, give him Tom Aspinall. Greg Hardy, I think your next fight should be Parker Porter. Burns, fight to make is definitely Masvidal, but I see him fighting Leon Edwards. Wonderboy Thompson, I think he should get the winner of Shamaya versus The Leech. Arena Donna definitely should. Her next fight should be GDR, if not Aspen Ladd. Yana Kunitskaya, her next fight should be against Sarah McCann. And then Sean O'Malley, I think he should fight Cody Garbrandt, but will Cody Garbrandt take that fight? No. I wonder who his next opponent will be, and obviously Chris Moutinho. Definitely needs to take a little bit of time off, but I think he should fight somebody of the likes of a Miles Johns or something of that nature, and see where they go from there. All right, guys, that covers everything on UFC 264, the post-fight reaction. I'm your host, Lavo Rihanna. Thank you for tuning in, and then I will come back at you with more videos later this week. Until then, guys, peace, guys. Comment on the comment section below. Hit that like and subscribe button. I'll see you guys next time. Peace, guys, and have a good one.